In the mystical mountains of ancient China, where mist clung to peaks like silk and legends were born in every valley, there emerged a figure whose story would transcend the boundaries between the mortal and the divine. Her name was He Qiong, but the world would come to know her as He Xiangu, the Immortal Woman, the only definitively female member of the legendary Eight Immortals of Taoism. Her tale begins in the Tang dynasty, during the reign of the formidable Empress Wu Zetian, in a humble region near Zhengqing, Guangdong province. The daughter of a simple shopkeeper named He Tai, she lived near the shimmering waters of Mica Creek, where the ordinary and extraordinary existed side by side. The moment of her birth itself announced that this child was touched by the heavens. As she entered the world, witnesses claimed that purple clouds enveloped the entire house, filling the air with an otherworldly glow. Upon her head, 6 long hairs sprouted from her crown, marking her as chosen by forces beyond mortal understanding. Some accounts speak of 6 beams of light shining above her, while others mention a mysterious white mark upon her forehead. From her earliest years, He Qiong was extraordinary. At merely 4 years of age, she possessed strength that defied her small frame, able to lift objects that would challenge grown men. But it was not her physical prowess that set her apart. The young girl exhibited a gentle nature and unwavering devotion to her parents, demonstrating a filial piety that was rare even in a culture that prized such virtues above all else. She moved through her childhood with an otherworldly grace, as if walking between 2 worlds. When He Qiong reached the age of 13, her destiny began to reveal itself. One version of her story tells of a day when she ventured into the mountains with her female companions to pick tea leaves among the misty peaks. The group laughed and chatted as young girls do, gathering the precious leaves under the warm sun. But as the day wore on, He Qiong became separated from her companions. Lost and alone, she wandered deeper into the wilderness, beneath the shadow of the eastern peak. It was there, in that moment of solitude and uncertainty, that she encountered a figure who would change everything. A man emerged from the mountain paths, unlike any she had ever seen. He had a long, flowing beard and eyes of deep azure blue that seemed to pierce through to one's very soul. Upon his head sat a tall cap, and he wore magnificent robes of 6 layers. This was no ordinary wanderer. This was Lü Dongbin, the most famous and revered of all the 8 immortals, known for his elegance, wisdom, and supernatural abilities. The young girl immediately recognized the divine nature of the being before her. Without hesitation, she prostrated herself and bowed deeply, showing the respect due to an immortal. Lü Dongbin looked upon her with eyes that saw not just who she was, but who she was destined to become. From within his robes, he produced a peach, but this was no ordinary fruit. It was imbued with the essence of immortality itself. "If you eat this," Lü Dongbin said, his voice resonating with power and compassion, "one day you will ascend to heaven. If you refuse, you will remain forever in the mortal realm." He Qiong accepted the peach and bit into its flesh. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced, sweet beyond description, filling her entire being with warmth and light. She consumed only half of the mystical fruit before Lü Dongbin pointed her toward the path home. When she finally emerged from the mountains and returned to her worried family, she believed she had been gone for merely a day. Her parents, however, told her that more than a month had passed. Time itself had bent around her encounter with the divine. From that moment forward, He Qiong was transformed. The hunger that drives all mortals disappeared. She no longer felt exhaustion, no matter how far she wandered or how long she remained awake. A new awareness blossomed within her, the ability to perceive events before they occurred, to glimpse the threads of fate that bound human lives. She could foresee both blessings and calamities, seeing the pattern of karma that wove through existence. Another account of her transformation tells a different but equally profound tale. In this version, when He Qiong turned 14 or 15, she experienced a vivid and powerful dream. A divine personage appeared before her in this vision, radiant and filled with ancient wisdom. The celestial being instructed her to consume powdered mica, the crystalline mineral that sparkled in the mountains around her home. This substance, the vision promised, would make her body ethereal and grant her immunity from death itself. Upon waking, He Qiong knew with absolute certainty that this was no ordinary dream. It was a calling, a path laid before her by the universe itself. She vowed to remain a virgin, dedicating her purity to her spiritual cultivation. She began consuming the powdered mica daily, as instructed, and gradually reduced her intake of ordinary food. As the days and weeks passed, her body began to transform. She became lighter, more ethereal, as if the very substance of her physical form was changing into something finer, something more refined. Each morning, He Qiong would rise with the sun and venture into the mountains. She moved across the peaks with impossible grace, as if her feet barely touched the ground. She gathered wild fruits and mountain herbs, always returning home in the evening to present these offerings to her mother, maintaining her filial duties even as she transcended the mortal condition. The villagers would watch in amazement as she seemed to float across the landscape, her movements fluid and otherworldly. As her spiritual cultivation deepened, He Qiong's speech began to change. To ordinary ears, her words sometimes seemed strange or abnormal, as if she were speaking in the language of the heavens rather than of mortals. But those who listened carefully could discern profound wisdom in her utterances, insights into the nature of reality that went far beyond conventional understanding. Her growing reputation reached the ears of the powerful. Empress Wu Zetian, that formidable ruler who had seized the throne through cunning and will, heard tales of the young woman who had transcended mortality. The empress, obsessed with her own longevity and power, desired to learn the secrets of immortality for herself. She dispatched royal messengers to summon He Qiong to the imperial palace, intending to extract her knowledge and perhaps extend her own reign indefinitely. But He Xiangu, as she was now becoming known, perceived the empress's true motivations. The desire for immortality born from greed and the lust for power was antithetical to the true path. The young immortal realized that the time had come to depart from the mortal world entirely. As the royal messengers traveled to bring her to the palace, something extraordinary occurred. He Xiangu simply vanished. The bewildered messengers searched everywhere, but she had disappeared as completely as morning mist under the sun. According to legend, on that day, or perhaps during the Jinglong era in the reign of Emperor Zhongzong, He Xiangu ascended to heaven in broad daylight. Witnesses claimed to see her rise into the sky, her form becoming translucent as she floated upward, finally achieving complete immortality and taking her place among the celestial beings. Yet another tale from her mortal days speaks to the conflict between earthly expectations and spiritual calling. When she was young, her parents, like all parents of that era, had expectations for their daughter's future. They secretly arranged a marriage for her, hoping to see her settled into a conventional life. On the night before the wedding, He Xiangu stood at a crossroads between two worlds. She had already tasted immortality, had already walked paths between heaven and earth. How could she now bind herself to an ordinary mortal existence? That night, she made her choice. She vanished from her home, leaving behind only a cryptic poem hidden between her screens and inkstone. The words spoke of Magu, another legendary immortal, and of journeys to celestial realms. Magu blames me for longing for earthly distractions. Separating from the immortals is a long journey. I'm heading to Cangzhou to play under the moonlight, riding backward on the yellow crane, listening to the phoenix flute. The next morning, her distraught parents searched everywhere for their daughter. By the well, they found a single shoe, the only physical trace she had left behind. Later, a Taoist priest from Luofu Mountain came to their village and spoke of having seen her at Magu Rock, dwelling among the immortals. He mentioned that she had left a message: "Go to Xingqing and collect the shoe left by the well for me." It was her way of confirming that she had indeed transcended, leaving behind even the smallest remnants of her mortal life. Stories of He Xiangu's powers and compassion spread throughout the land. During the Song dynasty, the great general Di Qing found himself leading a campaign to suppress the non-known rebellion. As his army passed through Yongzhou, he heard tales of the immortal woman who could foresee the future. Despite his military prowess and strategic mind, Di Qing was troubled by uncertainty about the upcoming battle. He sought out He Xiangu to request her insight. When he found her, the immortal's eyes seemed to look through time itself as she spoke. General, when you go there, you won't even see the enemy. Before you reach them, they will have already been defeated and fled. He Qiong was skeptical. He was a practical military man, and such a prediction seemed too fortunate to be true. Yet when his army finally engaged with the rebel forces led by Nong Zhigao, her words proved prophetic. After only a few exchanges of combat, the enemy forces broke and fled toward the Dali kingdom. He Xiangu's vision had been accurate down to the smallest detail. As an immortal, He Xiangu took her place among the legendary Eight Immortals, that anarchic group of celestial beings who transcended conventional hierarchies and brought blessings to all regardless of social status. In the company of figures like the elegant scholar Lü Dongbin, the mystical Zhang Walao who rode his donkey backwards, the androgynous street performer Lan Caihe, and the iron-crutched healer Li Taiguai, she represented compassion, purity, and the power of spiritual dedication. In artistic depictions throughout the centuries, He Xiangu is easily recognized as the sole definitively female member of the group. She is most often shown carrying a lotus flower, that potent symbol borrowed from Buddhist tradition representing purity and enlightenment rising from the mud of worldly existence. The lotus she bore was no mere decoration. It possessed the power to improve both physical and mental health, to heal the sick and restore balance to troubled minds. Sometimes she is depicted holding a xiong, a Chinese reed organ, or a peach from the gardens of the Queen Mother of the West, those mythical fruits that granted immortality. The Eight Immortals became known for their adventures and their dedication to fighting evil and helping the downtrodden. The most famous tale tells of their journey to attend the conference of the Magical Peach, hosted by the Queen Mother of the West in her celestial palace. When they encountered the vast Bohai Sea blocking their path, Lü Dongbin suggested that instead of simply flying across on clouds, each immortal should demonstrate their unique powers. This gave rise to the famous Chinese proverb, "The Eight Immortals cross the sea." Each reveals its divine powers, meaning that everyone should contribute their particular skills to achieve a common goal. He Xiangu was revered as the patron of women, particularly those seeking spiritual truth in a world that offered them limited paths to enlightenment. In a society where women's roles were rigidly defined and their spiritual aspirations often dismissed, she stood as a beacon of possibility. Her story proved that dedication, purity of purpose, and unwavering commitment to the spiritual path could transcend all earthly limitations, even those of gender and social status. Temples throughout China and Taiwan came to honor the Eight Immortals, with their symbols placed before main altars to ward off evil influences. The Eight Immortals Palace in Xi'an, once a simple nunnery, became a major center of devotion, built according to legend atop an ancient wine shop to protect the region from divine thunder. Though He Xiangu is rarely worshipped alone, she remains a central figure in this collective veneration, her image inspiring countless women throughout the centuries to seek their own paths to spiritual liberation. Her legend endures not merely as a tale of magical transformation, but as a profound teaching about the nature of enlightenment itself. He Xiangu's journey from peasant girl to celestial immortal demonstrates that divinity is not reserved for emperors and priests, for the wealthy and powerful. The path to transcendence is open to those with pure hearts, unwavering dedication, and the courage to answer when destiny calls. Today, more than 1,000 years after her ascension, He Xiangu remains a vital presence in Chinese culture. Her story appears in literature, art, theater, and film. She represents the possibility of transformation, the power of female spirituality, and the eternal truth that the journey from earth to heaven begins with a single step, or perhaps with a single bite of a mystical peach offered by an immortal on a mountain path. In her tale, we find timeless wisdom, that true immortality is not about endless years of life, but about transcending the limitations that bind us. That purity of purpose and dedication to something greater than ourselves can transform even the humblest among us into beings of divine power. And that sometimes, the greatest journey begins when we have the courage to leave behind a single shoe by a well and step into our destiny.